Hello and welcome to the Leaders of Tomorrow, the only daily MSME platform on national television where we give you the opportunity to have your voice heard on a one-of-its-kind show. We are excited to be back with a very special season and we hope you are too. Today I'm in conversation with V Vaidyanathan. He's the founder and chairman of Capital First. Do join us on this special interview. Thank you very much for speaking with us here on the Leaders of Tomorrow, Mr. Vaidyanathan. Such a pleasure to be able to kickstart a brand new season by having a voice like yourself to talk to our viewers really about the different aspects of finance. And just before we come to that and talk about Capital First and talk about the finance industry, I want to talk about entrepreneurship. That's at the core of everything that we do and that's at the core of what you do as well. So maybe you can run us through your own entrepreneurial journey.
First of all, it's a pleasure to talk to you, Sunanda, and warm greetings to all viewers of ET Now. When I was at ICICI in 2010, until 2010, definitely I used to think that why not set up another bank and why could I not have an ownership to have a bank? And but of course, bank licenses used to come only once in 10 years. 1990s, at that point, 1990s, then in 2004, Yes Bank and Kotak Bank. Then I thought, look, it's going to take a very long time. So I thought a proxy way was to actually get a equity in a non-banking finance company, build it up, and then try someday in life to convert it to a bank. This was the core theme with which I started.
Okay, but there must have been some inflection point, right, for someone who's worked in the corporate sector for so long. Was there any one point where you decided that, yes, I want to turn entrepreneur?
This thought actually came to me somewhere in 2005. Right, that was within a few years of being with the bank, and but that thought stayed as a dormant thought with me for many years after that. Then somewhere around 2009 or 10, this idea just came back, rushing back to me, and this was probably the best way of getting around it actually.
Okay, we love asking the entrepreneurs who come on our show about how you know and how you really decide whether the desire to start out as an entrepreneur is also something that is financially viable. How did you know that this was something that you could possibly bring investors to, this was something that you could scale?
At that point of time, this was actually a small non-banking finance company. At least this was the one that I happened to spot a bit by accident from outside. And this company had close to about 835 crores of loans, largely to real estate developers. And this company had a foreign exchange business, had a broking business, and some investment management business. So this was what this company was all about. The idea at that point of time was that if we could hollow out all wholesale businesses here, lending to large real estate developers was not my core business. That's not what I wanted to do as the core business. And then the idea was to actually think of financing small entrepreneurs. Could be as low as ticket sizes, maybe 1 crore, 2 crores, maybe even 50,000 rupees, maybe 20,000 rupees. But finance small entrepreneurs and small consumers and build a big business out of that. That was the core theme. And this idea came very rushing to me somewhere around that time. Coming back to investors, my key theme used to be that if the idea is good and if there's growth, then you'll always find investors. At least that's what the thought was.
I just want to go back to what you said, that it just came rushing to you. In that sense, would you say that entrepreneurship is a lot like love marriage, that you just know? When you know, you know?
Well, when you know, but I feel that the concept of entrepreneurship itself is changing actually. Traditionally, entrepreneurship used to happen coming across generations, and some people and family were known as business families, so to say. Now, the new theme in India is no longer that. It's not coming across generations. It's professional entrepreneurship. And professional entrepreneurship is not people like me. We just give it a lead. It actually comes from stock ownership to a large number of employees. Generally, the way we think about it in Capital First is that all our senior management, all the people who have stock options are all owners, are all entrepreneurs. And when you think about like that, then suddenly entrepreneurship is a very, very big idea, and it is democratized to a large number of people.
That's fascinating. So is it possible then you're saying that, and most of the MSMEs that we talk to are largely family run businesses. So is it possible for entrepreneurs to both be professionally managed as well as run still by families or companies or individuals?
It's absolutely necessary for the future because there are, because the skill set that is now required for the new age entrepreneurships of India is so different. Because the way people have been doing business for say 20, 30, 50 years is suddenly being disrupted by technology. So the original founding entrepreneur may not have the skills to deal with that. So what do? You need new professionals. A professional is not going to come and work with you as an employee because he will quit and go. So the only way is to create partnerships. The only way is to create and give stock ownership to new professionals, and that's the only lasting way. If you tell a guy you're an employee, he will quit next morning when he finds the next job. But if you say you're a partner, it's your company.
And I guess ESOPs really help.
ESOPs help. Phantoms, well, ESOP in a listed company, but what do you do if it's a small entrepreneur and he wants a professional to join him, right? If he tells him, look, you're an employee, he can treat as an employee. But what happens is that they can actually give phantom options, or they can actually transfer their own stock of 5 or 10% to their employee, and then you see the motivation. It'll be different.
Okay, so I just want to have one more thing that I want to discuss with you on entrepreneurship. Since you're saying that the way entrepreneurship is being done today is very different from how it used to be.
It's democratized.
It's democratized. And you, for example, I do know at Capital First, encourage everyone to think like an entrepreneur. Is it something that can be taught?
Well, again, I say that it is absolutely necessary, and yes, it can also be taught, because the key thing I see in many new entrepreneurs of these days is that they're realizing that they actually want to co-opt more people into this partnership, and certainly people can imbibe in their thinking. But I can tell you, it is not a choice. If entrepreneurs of today have to grow for tomorrow, they need professionals, and professionals have to get ownership.
Okay, that's an interesting thought, and let's then dovetail into talking about Capital First itself. For the sake of our viewers who don't know, and I'm sure that's a small minority, can you run us through the business that you do?
Okay, we started Capital First in 2010, was a finance company, as I said. We had a large real estate book and a very small retail financing book, 94 crores. Today, after 7 years, the retail loan book is about 18,500 crores.
What percent is that, if you can tell us?
I mean, well, it's astronomical, astronomical in terms of CAGR. It's rather irrelevant. But if you can see a company that's become that big in about 7 years, then you know that it's a different kind of a business. What we did was, when we said we finance small entrepreneurs, we want to finance small consumers, it's a very large market. And we started financing those customers in a differentiated sort of a way, and that became a big market. Along the way, we got investors, and without a significant, let me say, investors like Warburg Pincus and Goldman Sachs Investment and maybe GIC, without these sort of big names, I think it would have been almost impossible, or certainly very difficult.
Okay, so I want to break down each of those and talk about the differentiated model that you do offer the MSMEs. Can you go a little more into depth into how you really sort of differentiate yourself from your peers?
Let me put it like this. Traditionally, for a long period of time, maybe for decades and centuries, whenever people want to lend to any entrepreneur or an individual, the usual first question is, show me income tax return. I mean, I guess that's the question you would have heard if you ever took a loan. If it's a salaried employee, the question is, okay, show me a salary slip. Now, we must remember that only 3.4% of India file their tax returns. So if the starting question is show me income tax return, then you don't have a business for 97% of the people. So what we did was that we started financing many of these entrepreneurs and consumers, not on the basis of income tax return alone, maybe it's a data point, but by taking maybe the bank statement, seeing the cash flows, and started figuring out a new model. Then we converted many of these insights to an analytical model and started figuring out if we can take a decision on these people in a quick way, in a respectful way, to provide them loans.
Okay, so why have a differentiated model when no one else in the industry is possibly trying it? And have you started now seeing some of your peers maybe adopting these models?
First of all, let me just say that financing as such in India, a large number of banks and the state-owned banks and private sector banks, they have all been trying to and have actually done an excellent job in dealing with this this segment, so-called self-employed segment, or even the salaried segment. Otherwise, India wouldn't have progressed the way it has. But the issue is this, that many of such lending comes under packaged lending, home loan, car loan, and so on. When you define loans in the form of a certain product, then you define certain policies that go with that product. You say it's a 20-year loan, your rate of interest is this, you will have to pay monthly EMI. It just gets too defined, and therefore the moment you define something, the segment that can avail it is very small. What we feel is that a new segments can be opened up with the kind of new technologies that are coming about, and with the opening up of new technologies, not just capital first, but a new clutch of lenders who are coming to the marketplace is just finding new segments to lend to, which has not been traditionally lent to by the existing system.
Okay, so one more quick question before we take a break, and the fundamental question: why lend to MSMEs? What is at the heart of that decision to lend to this sector, SMEs and MSMEs?
Well, two things actually. One is that we all know that SMEs are powering India at a grassroots level and creating tremendous employment for the country, right? Much more than what the large corporates are creating. Nevertheless, large corporates creating is important, but what the micro entrepreneurs are creating is multiple times what large corporates are creating. So any financing to that segment fundamentally changes India. Number two, it can be done viably, it can be done profitably, and it can be done sustainably if approached in a way that is customized for them. If you package them in policies, then you so to say, you disenfranchise a large number of people. But if you're willing to make programs for them, let me give you an example. I found one small entrepreneur who was providing financing for college students. Now, traditionally, no home loan, no car loan, no two-wheeler loan will reach a college student. But I found an entrepreneur, he says, I will provide to college students. I said, how do you provide for college students? I said, how do you collect? Now, traditional model of telecalling doesn't work. He has appointed agents in the college to collect from their peers and pay back the lender. Now, think about it. Now, a traditional lending will never reach this customer. Now, this entity is reaching the customer. In other words, the moment the country creates more and more entrepreneurs in reaching these segments, you will find new ways of reaching the segment. Let me give you one more example. Traditional education loans. Education loans are for college, they are for MBAs, they are for higher education, they are going overseas. But someone I saw is providing education loans or maybe vocational loans for vocational training like ITI and so on. So new segments are getting created in India which the traditional banking system does not create, and that is the power of new entrepreneurs in this sector.
Fantastic. We'll continue talking about Capital First on the other side of this very quick break. Just stay tuned. Welcome back. We are on this very special interview with Mr. Vaidyanathan of Capital First, talking about all things finance, talking about all things entrepreneurship. Just before we hit the break, we were talking about Capital First, and one thing that I'm quite curious about, and you can help our viewers understand it better, of course, is that MSMEs are perceived to be borrowers who may not necessarily have the best track record when it comes to repaying, but you've managed to have some surprising numbers as far as repayments, NPAs, etc. concerned. So help us understand how you've managed to differentiate yourself there.
Well, first of all, I do agree that traditionally MSMEs NPA in India has been anywhere between 5 to 10%, and that's the public numbers. Our gross NPA is about 1% and the net are about 0.3, 0.4%, so that's pretty good. Now, one of the big issues I often worry about is that sometimes we give a dog a bad name and kill it, right? And that should certainly not happen to the SME sector, so to say. We take a lot of effort in doing diligence on the customers we lend to. The truth is that we have to approve, or we do approve only about 65 to 70% of the applications that come to us. The truth is that we have to unfortunately reject about 30% of the applications that come to us. But that sort of diligence is required to lend before you get the quality of loans. To give you an idea, 40% of the rejections that we have to do in MSA lending is where customers do not have the cash flow to pay us back, or in our assessment do not have the cash flow to pay us back. Now mind the fact that I have used the word cash flow to pay us back, I didn't say the income tax returns to pay us back. So that's the difference between income tax returns and cash flow, and we focus a lot on the latter.
Okay, and is this a model that you will continue following in the years going forward? Any sort of innovations that you can talk to us, because you do use a lot of technology, so anything that you can talk about, how it's being used internally?
Yes, of course it's changing a lot, because a lot of things that we used to think as a good way of assessing customers is now moving over to technology. Because earlier, for example, if you wanted some KYC from someone, you produce a physical document. Now people put a fingerprint and KYC has become electronic. Earlier you used to take signature to the physical way. Now signature has become electronic, because electronic signatures has become the norm through the Aadhaar payment platform. Oftentimes, for small loans, when you're giving somebody 20,000-30,000 rupees or lakh of rupees, if somebody wanted to just buy a PC or a laptop or a printer, now it is not possible to do cash flow checks. For that, new age methodologies of lending come into play, and new age methodologies don't take into account cash flows. They take into account a number of other factors, such as a number of years in business. Does the customer own a credit card or a debit card or a home loan or something like that? Or it could just have information about if the customer is married or not, if the customer lives in a particular location, for how long have they lived, what the PIN code is. So oftentimes you can take such kind of information that is available about the customer and put it together in an algorithmic form and convert it to a decision making process.
Okay, you have an interesting list of investors, and you were naming some of them earlier, but what I want to know is, how did you convince the first investor to come on board? What was that experience like, and what can you advise our MSMEs?
Okay, this is an important question actually, especially for small entrepreneurs or medium-sized entrepreneurs who are getting started. Okay, in my case, very specifically to your question, now I left ICICI in 2010. Now between 2010 to 2012 was a window that we had to create something in this company so that investors can see the concept, like it, and willing to fund it. Now you cannot just walk out and say, hey, this is my track record, give me money. People want to see what are they financing. So the sort of algorithmic based lending model I talked about, where we lend not on cash flow but on the basis of these certain other parameters, we developed this model through trial and error and built the logic. Then we reached many entrepreneurs, investors. We reached a large number, basically we wanted close to 1,000 crores of equity. Now 1,000 crores of equity can come only from large private equity players. Actually, I first had tried a QIP. It failed. Basically, no one subscribed. Then I said, okay, QIP is not working, private equity. Now we went to a number of large private equity players, demonstrated this concept that at least the number I used to tell investors those days was that we will build a 25,000 crore loan book, and in close to 5 to 6 years, and build a profit of anywhere about 500 crores or so. Now for this idea, can you give me 1,000 crores?
Okay. You've achieved those numbers, right?
No, we got up to 20,000 crores. So we're still short of what we said, but we still have a year to get to the promises. But the point is still, that's the kind of promises we made, or at least that's the kind of direction we showed. With this picture of what what is the model we have and what we will build, we made a spreadsheet out of this. And in spreadsheets, anything can be shown. So we showed this model to many people. Now, when we go with this idea to people, it's not that people are saying, hey, jumping, I'm giving you, here is the money. It doesn't come like that, because 1,000 crores is a big check. So we, and with the 1,000 crores, we had to buy out the existing shareholders. So we had the idea. Then with that, then they want to see how much of your skin is there in the game. So at least in my case, what I did was, I pledged my house, I pledged a few other property I had, I borrowed some money against it. With that money, I bought a certain amount of stock in the company, or I promised to buy a stock in the company, and showed that this is my skin in the game. So when people see skin in the game, that people say, you are so committed that you are willing to do, to stand by, for the sake of your business, you're willing to do this, then people are willing to back you.
That's interesting. What about MSMEs then who don't maybe have that kind of collateral to put in? What would your advice be? Because you're saying skin in the game is important. What about the flip side?
Okay, let me just split this issue up. You know, we are not expecting many SMEs to go to private equity firms and try to get 50, 100, 200 million dollars. That's not what we're talking for small entrepreneurs. For, let me say, small, medium entrepreneurs, maybe the investment for equity in the business of maybe 5 crores, 10 crores, 15 crores, 20 crores. Now, one way for them is to actually, maybe pledge, initially maybe even borrow from friends, families, and maybe invest it in, maybe pledge the residential or property to invest in the business and create what they're going to create. But yeah, I do believe that some skin in the game is necessary for investors to come in. In 2012, after the 2 years effort of trying to find one big private equity, in fact, my wish list used to be to find one big guy. This was my dream when I left ICICI. Let me tell you where things moved from there. And that happened to be Warburg Pincus in 2012. In the next year, we got funding somewhere in 2015. We got funding from Goldman Sachs Asset Management. We got funding from One North. We got funding from HDFC. So that became a big story for us. We raised 300 crores at 390 rupees a share, while the previous issue was at 160 rupees a share. The next issue we did in 2016 at 712 rupees a share to GIC. So what I'm trying to say is that once you're on the roll and you demonstrate business model, new investors come along the way at even higher valuations, and that helps the story.
Okay. So does any of your investors exiting change any of your plans, and how do you really prepare for these changes?
Well, I'm always very happy if investors came in, got appreciation, made money, and exit, right? Then it's a happy life for everybody. Warburg Pincus sold 25% of the 61% stake that they had, and they monetized it. But a new set of investors have now come in, including GIC. And I'm of the belief that the company goes on, probably become bigger over a period of time, and hopefully the new investors will make more money over time.
I was reading a report that said that one of your biggest regrets is that you didn't have a marquee investor on board before you decided to quit ICICI and go the entrepreneurial route. Why is that?
Well, yes, it is. It became a regret at that point of time between 2010 to 12. It's happy stories to tell looking back, but fact is that during that window, nothing was working. And we were running out of equity. So certainly at that point of time, I wished that I had a big equity player with me when I left the firm. Rather than first leaving and searching, it can be very scary.
You certainly may be the biggest amongst your peers, but competition in this space seems to be heating up, especially with the government aggressively chasing after, bringing in more fintech tools into the market. Technology is disrupting the way business is done in this industry. So how do you ensure that you're staying out from the rest of your competition?
Well, we always certainly try to create new market segments. One of the biggest theories we're working out in Capital First is that don't do something that everybody else is doing. Create new market segments. Of course, do things that other people are also doing, but keep trying to figure out new segments. And that is critically the mantra of Capital First.
Okay. One quick question before we then wind down the show and talk about also how the industry is changing. I do know that government regulation for this industry, something that's rapidly changing, and I was just talking about how the government is aggressively also pushing, say, demonetization, fintech apps, etc. Do you wish for more regulation or less regulation really for the finance space in India?
Well, first of all, the things that the government has done over the last 4 or 5 years, or maybe last 3 years, is just phenomenal. Because the kind of people, when demonetization happened, the whole the system was rattling, and you had foreign Nobel laureates talking about how it is going to destroy India and all that stuff. Really, it was probably the biggest thing India did, most positive thing India did, because a large amount of a parallel economy moved from parallel into the mainstream. And for small entrepreneurs, if they see it in the positive spirit, it is the biggest thing that will have happened to their lives. Why? Because earlier they were not eligible for bank loans because the profitability and the income was not showing on the bank books. Now, if it's showing on a banking account, lenders can lend to you, you can become bigger.
All All right, so that's been a very fascinating conversation, talking about entrepreneurship, talking about capital first, but there's so much more that we need to talk to you about, and that is coming up on part 2 of this very special conversation, where we will pick Mr. Vaidyanathan's brains about specific skill sets that you, the MSME entrepreneur, should have, including, of course, marketing as well as people skills. If you have anything that you'd like to tell us or have any feedback on this interview, do remember you can write in to us at leadersoftomorrowtimesgroup.com. You can reach us on social media or tweet me personally at Sunanda_J. We promise to have all your questions answered. Thanks for watching.